My encounter with Kirsty in Detroit was quite casual. He had noticed my presence at a religious celebration in this city in the USA, where a large number of Macedonians live. As Vice President of the National Commission for Relations with Religious Communities, I used to attend many important celebrations among Macedonians in the diaspora in that period. Such events were good opportunities for me to monitor the life of the Macedonian emigrants on almost all continents, and also to meet my friends and acquaintances who had moved from our motherland and with whom I had lost track. This refers to former citizens of Prespa, friends from my childhood and teenage years. The encounter with my schoolmate Kirsty was unexpected, but it was exciting. I didn't recognize him, but luckily he recognized me among that large crowd of people gathered to attend the consecration of the church. From that moment onwards, I was in his company during my stay in Detroit, refreshing our memories from our childhood and youth. He introduced me to his wife Dragica and their 2 children, their son Alexander and daughter Milica, who were aged 16 and 20 respectively. His successful business enabled him to be secure economically, so that his wife could completely dedicate her time to raising their children. In addition, his participation in the activities of the church community, as well as his involvement with the Macedonian newspapers, made him popular among our migrant workers in Detroit. But his life hadn't always been as smooth as it seemed at first sight. His first problem was an unhappy relationship with an American girl named Mary. Soon after his arrival in America, he met her and fell head over heels in love. He couldn't imagine a day without her. His lack of sexual experience had done it. The American girl was dazzled by his good looks, but mainly by his manliness, typical of Macedonians. Fortunately, his love affair with Mary lasted for a relatively short time, so he didn't have time to rush into marrying her. Being a child of divorced parents and raised by her aunt, she made efforts to become independent as soon as possible so that she could finally start living by her own decisions. But it was impossible for her to completely hide her freedom-loving habits learned during her childhood and formative years, no matter what she did. Kirsty was raised in a patriarchal setting in which order and rank status reigned in the ethnic sense of the word. Her pressure on him to marry her was getting stronger and stronger day by day, but it had an adverse effect on him. He became more and more estranged from her. As a result, he reduced the numbers of dates with her, inventing excuses that he had to travel for business more often. After some time, he became cold towards Mary, and they broke off. Kirsty experienced this loss like an achievement, a significant learning experience in his life. It didn't affect his intention to get married and start a family. His close relatives in Detroit, who helped him come to this beautiful country, gave him their support in this situation. Their position was categorical. He should look for his soulmate in Macedonia. The engagement would take place in Resin, and the wedding in Detroit. This plan was realized a year later. During his stay in Macedonia, he met a former schoolmate, Dragica, who didn't recognize him, at the market in Prespa. She was his favorite female friend in high school, but nothing more, and therefore she remained in his mind as an innocent memory from his youth. This encounter with her at the marketplace that day reawakened his repressed feelings. He saw his soulmate in her. A month later, on Ilinden, they got married. This marriage ceremony, welcomed by all his relatives and friends, was solemnly celebrated. Its pinnacle was the wedding ceremony in Detroit. However, another event took place a year before Kirsty and Dragica were married. When he arrived in his fatherland, he took a bus from Skopje to Rezen, and on that occasion, he got to know the girl who was sitting next to him, named Frosina. She was from Ohrid and was returning from Skopje, where she was enrolled in the Faculty of Philosophy. Their conversation was so pleasant and brought them close. So Krasti decided to spend that day in Ohrid with Frosina. She showed him the cultural and historic monuments of Ohrid, took him along the promenade, and he took her to a lavish lunch at St. Noam, which strengthened both their friendship and love relationship. They spent the evening in a tavern and went to their homes late that night. She returned to her parents while he left for Rezin. Krasti didn't return to Ohrid or try to get in touch with Frosina, not even by phone. After his engagement with Dragica, they went to Detroit. Their marriage was harmonious, enriched by their children who were the fruits of their love. This harmony, however, was disturbed a year later when Frosina sent him a message that she had gotten pregnant by him and was expecting him to take her to America. This message was sent through a friend of hers, a migrant worker in Detroit, who happened to know Krasti. At that time, Frosina didn't know that Krasti had gotten married. She learned about this from her friend. Shocked by this, she sent him another message. If he wouldn't take her, then he was to send money for the baby as she intended to give birth. If not, she would tell his wife all about this, and that would probably break up his marriage. He agreed to comply with her demands and immediately sent her money as part of his financial obligation through Ohridska Banka, where a friend of hers was working. 5 years later, Krasti was weighed down with new worries, although Dragica had never learned about his affair with Frosina. In addition to his legitimate children, he had an illegitimate son in Ohrid who was named after him, Krasti. He was tormented by various feelings, such as what his son looked like, whether he resembled him, etc. The 5-year-old son also wanted to know his father, where he was and what he looked like. The very thought of his son made Krasti sick emotionally. The burden was so great that he made plans to go to Macedonia and see his son, who was conceived in Svetinam. He resorted to a secret tactic to go to his fatherland alone, without Dragica. Krasti wanted to surprise Frosina with his visit to Ohrid. Therefore, he didn't inform her of his arrival in order to visit her and see his son. In addition, he planned to acknowledge his paternity. Besides that, he wanted to have a serious talk with Frosina about whether he should increase his financial assistance for his son because he was growing up and would soon go to school. His plan to go to Macedonia alone was finally realized. One nice day in May, he met Frosina and their son at the Ohrid port. Their meeting was very exciting. The three started crying. Krasti took his son in his arms and embraced him affectionately, and also his mother, who had never dreamt that something like this would ever happen. More than happy, they took a taxi and went to Svetinam to celebrate this exceptional event. Everything that Krasti planned before his arrival happened. He acknowledged paternity of his son, provided financial support, and promised Frosina that he would visit them in Ohrid every second year.
So, something good came out of a poor choice.